So I just seen the new Speak No Evil movie, the 2024 version. However, I've also seen the original 2022 Danish version. Now, timestamps are in the description below if you just want to jump straight to the point, but I want to explain real quick what I want to do in this video. So I want to go ahead and give a spoiler-free review for each of the movies, both the 2024 and the 2022 Speak No Evil. And then after I'm done reviewing and scoring them, I want to go ahead and jump into a spoiler discussion comparing the two and why I believe one works and one doesn't. And lastly, as always, at the end of the video, I'll be giving a similar recommendation so you can add to your watch list. But like I said, timestamps are in the description, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the 2024 Speak No Evil, directed by James Watkins, starring James McAvoy. I did not enjoy this new Speak No Evil. I thought this was one of the worst and most disappointing movies I've seen this year. As a remake, it does everything worse than the original, but even without comparison, just as a standalone film, this movie is still quite terrible. And this is a bit anecdotal, but I saw this with a friend who has never seen the original, and she hated this movie more than I did. So the 24 version follows the exact same plot summary as the 22 version, where we have one family who invites another family that they meet on vacation to their house over the weekend. And for simplicity's sake, we'll go ahead and call our protagonist the family that got invited. We'll call them the good family. And the other family who invited our protagonist to their house, the antagonist, we'll call them the bad family. So once the good family arrives to the bad family's house, the bad family starts exhibiting weird, strange, crude-like behavior. Things like unprovoked, shady, snarty comments, or even trying to parent their kid right in front of them. And these behaviors sort of become more frequent, and they stack up and become more aggressive until we go full-blown horror movie. Now, even though the remake and the original follow the exact same plot and they're both horror movies, I would say that these two movies use two very different types of horror. While the original 22 version is a straight-up psychological horror thriller, this movie, the remake, although it does use psychological horror elements near the first act in the beginning, or at least it tries to, and we'll get into that, it definitely does dive more into a dark survival cat and mouse thriller type of horror movie. Something like Mike Flanagan's Hush. Now, even though horror is subjective, off rip, I am confident saying that this movie is not scary at all. If you're looking for something to give you nightmares, if that's the type of horror you're looking for, you will not find that in the 2024 remake of Speak No Evil. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in itself for this movie, because its main goal, it's not trying to terrify you. It's not The Shining. It's not the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This movie's goal is definitely going for more of an intense, edge-of-your-seat thrill of, oh my god, are our protagonists gonna survive? Unfortunately though, it does fail at that too. This movie drags, it's fucking boring, and it's very cringy. There are a lot of so bad it's funny moments throughout the movie, especially the first act, when it was using psychological horror. The first act, I was laughing at it because of the way it was trying to build up these tense, psychological, creepy moments. Near all of them fail. And then the second act of this movie, the cat and mouse thriller, drags and drags and drags on. There's no stakes because the threat has not been established in the first act convincingly. So when the threat does come, you can't take it serious. The movie isn't long at all, but it feels like it has the same runtime as some shit like Satan's Tango or Santan Tango. I don't know, that stupid movie, I don't know how to pronounce it. Just so bored throughout the second act. It just goes on and on, but there's no urgency, there's no sense of tension or intensity. It just keeps going and going and going, and you already know how it's gonna end. The movie up until that point was extremely predictable, so just wrap it up. And it's so insane when you think about it, because the remake follows the exact formula, at least in terms of scenes, as the 22 version. They have the same scenes, but they're so different in terms of the little changes that they do in the writing and the directing and the acting and the line reads. Those little differences make such a big difference. The babysitter scene, the bar scene, the kids dancing scene, all of these scenes were so well crafted, and they hit the exact tone that they were going for in the 22 original. In the remake, you have those exact same scenes, but they're all inferior in every way. Writing, directing, line reads, acting in general. They were used for the same goal in the sense of psychological horror, trying to build up that tension and dread for what's to come, but the 22 version accomplished that. This one did not. Again, like I said, I wish there was a better word for it, but it's cringy most of the time, or boring. And it's unfortunate because I would say that there is a competent team here. James McAvoy is a talented actor. He literally played the crazy psycho guy in Split. I know he can pull off a character like this, but in this movie, he doesn't. He's way too over the top. He's bombastic. He has this 24/7 unhinged, teary-eyed look the entire movie. You just can't take it serious. Now, making something different does not automatically make it bad, but it also doesn't make it automatically good. For sure, I can give you props for trying to be bold and different, but that doesn't mean you accomplished what you were trying to do. This movie is just a waste of time. You gain nothing from watching this. There's no message, there's no real theme. Just badly written, directed scenes. You don't care about any of the characters. They're either miserable or uninteresting or just boring. The acting is either flat or over the top. The cinematography, there's like a few decent shots, but nothing memorable. Like the score as well, the score is forgettable. There's really no redeeming qualities whatsoever. You gain nothing from watching this movie. This movie's a big bucket of nothing. And the cringy moments don't even justify this as being a so bad it's funny movie altogether. It just has a few moments of that. Everything else is just boring schlock. The entertainment value you get from watching this movie is laughing at it and mocking it, which is obviously not a good thing. With all that being said, I'm gonna have to give Speak No Evil, the 2024 remake, a 2 out of 10. I did not like this movie. The writing is bad, the directing is bad, and unfortunately the acting is not that good either. Alright, enough talking about bad movies. Let's talk about a good one. And that is, of course, the 2022 Danish Speak No Evil, the original. I say Danish in quotations because although there are scenes that are filmed in the Danish language and Dutch, this movie is mostly in English from what I remember. Now, like I said in the remake review, the plots of these movies are the exact same in terms of plot summary. We got our protagonist, which we'll call the good family, being invited by the antagonist, the bad family, to their home after they meet them on vacation. The bad family seems to start showing unprovoked, aggressive, but subtle behaviors and actions throughout the movie, and it just gets worse and worse. Now, unlike the 2024 remake, where it uses psychological horror elements in the beginning of the movie, the first act, the 2022 version, the original, pure psychological horror thriller from beginning to end. Now, just because it's a psychological horror doesn't make it automatically good or better, but thankfully, in general, even without comparison to the shitty remake, this is a great movie. In fact, I would say that the psychological horror in this movie is probably its strongest part. Pacing is great. Every single scene, once the families meet each other, is just slowly but meticulously building this eerie sense of uneasiness. Now, both versions basically use the exact same formula in terms of scenes, but they're executed a bit differently. Not only in this movie is the tone much more realized and consistent, but the psychological horror is subtle and executed so efficiently. It's so effective in this movie because all the little elements just tie in together beautifully. The acting is not over the top, it matches the tone. The writing is believable and also matches the tone. There's not a moment of dialogue or a line read where it breaks your immersion and you're like, huh? What? Why'd they say that? And like I said, this movie is much more subtle, especially in terms of the horror. Where we got our antagonist, which again we'll call the bad family, they keep switching their conversation style from an over display of friendliness to passive aggressiveness, all the way to straight up unprovoked, downright rude, belittling comments. But it's never over the top. The acting and the editing, it makes everything flow so well together. And it truly does work. This movie gets under your skin. Even though nothing on paper is necessarily scary, you still fear for our protagonist, for the good family, because you don't understand truly what's going on. Who are these people? Why are they acting the way that they're acting? And throughout the runtime, the characters, along with the audience, us, we're trying to get a full grasp on what exactly are we dealing with here. And the movie's smart. It keeps us in the gray to the point where it's obvious something is wrong, but not obvious enough to know to what extent. And the characters are much more interesting or likable or just sympathetic, unlike another movie I've seen recently. The cinematography is also so good in this movie for no reason other than the fact that you had some competent filmmakers behind the scenes. So many shots in this movie are just legitimately gorgeous. And it's like, yes, thank you. A well-shot movie. Is that so hard to ask for? The score is also good. It's got this haunting, grand sound. I don't know if it's violins or horns, but it sounds like something you would hear in an Ari Aster film. All this put together, and this movie definitely accomplishes its goal in being an effective psychological horror. Now, that being said, if there's one thing that's going to steer people away from this movie, it's going to be the tone. Not just the dreadful tone in terms of the anxiety-inducing buildup of the psychological horror scenes, but as a whole, this movie is very grim, bleak, full of despair. It's not overtly graphic or necessarily full of disgusting violence, but this movie will leave you with a sinking feeling in your heart. To the point where it dances the line between, while that was a fantastic, somber, but terrifyingly well-made movie, and a kind of mean-spirited FU to the audience, which we have seen before is not inherently a bad thing. But with that being said, I still don't think that this movie went the whole mean-spirited misery porn for no reason route. The dark grimness never really ruined the experience for me because I understood that this movie is showing us sequences and scenes that are meant to be taken in a more allegorical sense, in the purpose of conveying its theme. There is an argument that it went a little over the top conveying its theme, but I'll get into that once we get into the spoiler discussion. And I'll also give my analysis on what I think this movie meant and why this movie is superior in every way to the 24 version. But overall, this was a fantastically well-made movie. It gets right under your skin. If you like the feeling what a good Black Mirror episode leaves you with, you should watch this movie. I am giving the original 2022 Speak No Evil a 7 out of 10. I would definitely recommend this movie if you don't mind depression. Now that we're done scoring both of the movies, let's go ahead and jump into the spoiler discussion. However, again, if you want to avoid spoilers, go into the description. I got the timestamps there. And just go ahead and skip over to the similar recommendation because I would recommend it. It's a good movie. But for now, you are officially warned. Spoiler warning for both Speak No Evil 2024 and Speak No Evil 2022. Now, the point of the spoiler-free reviews were to showcase my opinion on why I think one works and one doesn't as standalone films. Now, I'm going to be complaining specifically on the changes that the remake does and why they fail completely on every level compared to the 2022 original. Not in terms of just, oh, the writing and directing was worse, but in terms of my biggest gripe with this movie, and that is, of course, the purpose. The remake loses the purpose of the original and it replaces it with nothing else. There is no theme, there is no reason for this movie to exist, and I hate that. To do that, we gotta talk about the ending. The ending is the biggest thing that most people talk about for this movie, and it's also the biggest change I've seen people point out. So in the remake, we spend the last half hour of the good family fighting off the bad family. They win, nobody important dies, we get the good ending, roll credits. In the original, that does not play out. So in the 22 version, only in the last 10 minutes do we realize how much of a threat and how dangerous these people truly are. And there is no final confrontation, there is no chase sequence or one big fight off. You simply see the bad family grab our protagonist's daughter. They then cut her tongue out, and that's probably the most graphic scene in the movie because they explicitly show it. They drag this little girl away, and we have our mom and dad. They're screaming, they're panicking, they're crying, they're cursing. They're just freaking the fuck out. And then after a while, when they realize just how powerless they are and what happened, they just kind of give up. The bad family then take our protagonist to this sandy, rocky shore area. I'm not sure if it's a beach. They tell the mom and dad, get naked, take off all your clothes. They do that. They walk them down this shore and they literally stone them to death. They grab these big old rocks, just chuck them at them, and they die, and that's the end of the movie. So the big question then becomes why? Why did the antagonists do this? What did they gain from this? Because prior to the brutal murder of this family, the bad family was psychologically tormenting them from the get-go. It's not just with these rude, unprovoked comments, but they were actively going out of their way to confuse and discomfort these people as much as possible. With the bar scene, the bedroom scene, being unnecessarily aggressive to their own kid, nonchalantly admitting that they were lying about their careers, like, oh, yeah, I lied, no big deal. So again, we ask, why? Were they psychopaths? Did they just get off to this? Were they sadistic? Was this revenge for some unseen backstory that we don't know about? Some fucked up cult? The answer is no to all of that, because our protagonist, the dad, before he gets fucking stoned to death, he asks the bad family, why are you doing this? To then, of course, the bad dad says, because you let us. And that's it. That's the only line of reasoning we get. And it's not like The Strangers, the whole, oh, because you're home line, where the point of that line is, oh, look how scary and indifferent and cruel and sadistic evil can be. No, that doesn't work here. This is where the allegory comes in. The theme of this movie is obviously don't let people walk all over you. I say obviously because we are ham-fisted that literally from the jump. When the two families meet each other and you get the very first signs of the snarky, shady remarks in the comments, it starts off quite minimal, especially compared to where everything goes. As the movie goes on, these behaviors and rude actions just become more frequent and aggressive and hostile. They never put their foot down, and this boils up until eventually we get the ending that we get. Now, you can try and theorize any rationale that would work in a literal sense, but nothing really works. Although they're murderers, the antagonists never seem truly insane or mentally unhinged. They don't seem to be doing this for a profit in terms of money. And they also don't even seem to be enjoying this. When they're stoning them, they have a blank face. There's no sign or hint of sadistic pleasure. Not even in an Anton Chigurh way where he has a stiff face, but you can still tell by the phenomenal acting by Javier Bardem that he is somewhat enjoying what he's doing. This movie, the antagonists almost seem like they're doing it as a job, like they have to. But yet there's no hint that this is a paid job or some stupid ass bounty hit. To me, this was a metaphorical over-exaggeration warning of don't let the fear of confrontation or the fear of being perceived as impolite or rude stop you from standing up for yourself. I don't think you're supposed to take this necessarily literally. You can argue it's a bit over the top. For me, it never steered off too left field. I still enjoyed it. I thought they balanced everything out pretty effectively. In the remake, there's no theme. The bad guys are just robbers. Which again, being different does not automatically make it bad, but they kept 95% of the scenes that were used as stepping stones for the theme in the original. But they changed so many key factors and nuances that it's just a completely different story, a story with no purpose. A good example are the main two male leads, the good dad and the bad dad. They have no chemistry. In the original, you can tell that the good dad, although a weak man, he is looking to the bad dad as a sort of idealistic big brother, or he just wants to be his friend, which plays into the role of him not being able to ever put his foot down or set a boundary. In the remake, the bad guy is clearly a douchebag and makes everybody uncomfortable for the most part. They never fully show that need of him wanting to be accepted by the bad dad as a friend. So many scenes are just ruined in the remake. The power play dance move scene in the bar from the original gets changed in the remake of the bad couple are pretending to get a BJ in front of the good couple. And it's just so, like I said, tone deaf. Yeah, sure, it's a power play, but watch the scene and you let me know if that causes dread. The babysitter scene in both movies are two completely different scenes. In the original, that is the first big red flag. That is the first scene that really got under my skin, when you got the bad couple telling the good couple, hey, let's go out and get some dinner. And as soon as they're about to walk out the door, they then tell them, oh, the kids are staying, it's just gonna be us. And then they invite this fucking random guy saying, this is the babysitter, he'll watch the kids. That's an insane, creepy power move, and it adds such a big layer of dread. In the remake, how they play it out, it's like a minor hiccup of, that was weird, why didn't he tell us the kids are staying? It's like, those are your kids, why aren't you making a big deal out of this? And in the original, they don't necessarily make a big deal, but that's because they fear the confrontation. You can see in their faces that they're communicating with each other, the good mom and the good dad, that, what the fuck, what's going on? So many scenes like that I could go into detail. The drive back for the bunny scene, the bedroom scene where the bad family takes the good daughter and puts them in their bed. Everything is just amateur in the remake compared to the original. So they never established the putting your foot down message in the remake. In fact, they hinted at this character arc of the dad. There's a scene of him and the bad dad hunting. He has an animal in the scopes, but he doesn't pull the trigger. Okay, we now have a character arc being set up. He's eventually gonna have to pull the trigger. At the end of the movie, when he has the bad dad on the ground, he has some gunpoint, doesn't pull the trigger, and at no point does the movie hint at all about redemption or forgiveness or being the better character, being the stronger person. I guess 5 seconds after he doesn't pull the trigger, the fucking son just comes and bashes his head in, and nothing happens out of consequence. The movie just ends. We get the good ending. It's just literally, that's my biggest problem with the movie. It's pointless. Again, bad movie even without comparison to the original, but the original shows that you can have this exact same script and actually have a purpose and tell a meaningful story and a good story. Oh my god, that's exhausting. Speaking No Evil 2024 is exhausting. Alright, with all that being said, thank you. Let's go ahead and just get into the similar recommendation. Fuck. Okay, so for the similar recommendation, I wanted to choose a movie. Since I'm only choosing one, I wanted to do one that would appease both crowds. Now, if we're doing the original Speak No Evil 2022, I think the similar recommendation is quite obvious. But we are not doing that. So to choose a similar recommendation that I think would satisfy both audiences of the 24 Speak No Evil and the 22 version, I'm gonna have to go with The Invitation 2015, directed by Karen Kusama, the same director of Jennifer's Body. So the plot of this movie is a man and his girlfriend are invited by his ex-wife and her new husband to a dinner party. So the entire movie takes place at this dinner party, and as the night goes on, the main character, he just can't shake this feeling that something sinister is going on. This is a fantastic, eerie, dark, psychological mystery. One of the more underrated mystery thrillers, I would say, from the 2010s. First of all, I love when movies do that, where they take place in one location under a short amount of time. Exhibit A. The good ones I've seen are always engaging, and this one is no different. It's so well paced, it's so fun, even though it has a pretty dark tone all around. The mystery is just so gripping. As it unravels, you just get more invested into what is going on here. You kind of get an idea, but when everything, I don't even want to say anything. Don't watch any trailers, don't watch any summaries. The Invitation 2015, just watch the movie. The movie's not overtly graphic, it's not over the top in terms of bleakness. However, I think the tone of it, it's dark and eerie enough to satisfy, again, the 24 Speak No Evil fans and the 22 Speak No Evil fans. And it also has one of those endings where it just sticks with you. You can't forget the final shot. Alright, well, with all that being said, that does wrap up my reviews, my spoiler discussion, and my similar recommendation. This week, I already have 2 screenings saved for The Wild Robot and Megaopolis, so expect those reviews sometime next week. And I also have a screening for Joker 2. I'm seeing it early, I believe the 30th. Next Monday. So yeah, those are the reviews that are going to come out sometime in the next 2 weeks. I may do a movie roundup, just a big video of a bunch of small reviews of movies I've seen that I just haven't talked on the channel yet. But other than that, thank you so much to everybody who watched, and I will see you at the next one.